Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. It is with great pleasure that I welcome to the show today, Amber Jones.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on, Michelle. I'm so excited.
I know, I'm so excited too. I was just sharing that there's been a lot of talk about this in the Adult Chair closed group, a lot of talk about blended families. And it literally was like a light bulb moment because you and I have been chit-chatting for a while about your family. I mean, you and I have had multiple conversations, and I know we were together in January for the coaching program. We were just together for the master program. That was when I was like, hold on a second. I need to have you on the show because you really, really do this well. And I really want you to help people that are not that they're not doing it well, but you know what? I realize people don't know how to do this. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing. So thank you for taking the time to be on. I know you have how old is Zoe? 3-week-old baby?
Yeah, she's 3 weeks old.
3 weeks. And I just want to say, so Amber was with us in January in Charleston for the coaching program. 8 months pregnant? Were you 8 months pregnant?
Yeah.
With this giant belly. And she was like, I really hope I can make it to the master program. But Zoe was due like during this master program. And you had her early and you actually brought her to the master program with your husband and he watched her. So, so you could be with us. So what a great story that is in itself with your husband. That is amazing. And again, he also inspired me because I really was able to watch you two together and see the bond that you guys had. I was like, dang, they've done it right. So anyway, so thank you for taking the time today and being with us because I know you have a newborn baby at home.
Yeah, of course.
So let's just jump right in, Amber. Let's start out with your personal story.
Yeah. So I got divorced back in 2018. And at the time I had 2 babies. They were like 18 months, I think, was my youngest. And then my older daughter was 3. And, started dating. And like I said, I used to be a teacher. And so I met my current husband. He's also a teacher at the school that we were working at. Kind of started as friends, kind of started hanging out, and then started dating. And he has 3 children from his previous marriage. And in the beginning, we were like, okay, we're just going to play it safe, not introduce each other to the kids yet, all of that. And then as it started to get more serious, we actually sought out pre-blending therapy. So we went to go see a therapist before because we knew we were getting serious. We knew we wanted to get married and blend our families. And so we started going to some therapy before doing that, just so we could kind of talk out our goals as a family and how we wanted to do that, because we knew it was going to be pretty complicated. And it ended up being even more complicated than we thought because COVID happened. And so we were planning to be married in June of 2020, and then March of 2020 COVID hit. And so at the time, me and my kids were living with my parents. After I'd gotten divorced and everything, was still living with them. And so when COVID came and they were saying it was affecting older people, we were like, oh no, like, well, maybe we'll just move in with Ernest for a couple of weeks until this all blows over. And then of course it never blew over. And so
No.
I know my carefully laid plans of like everyone having their own space and we're going to do this quietly and gently and all the things, it just got blown up. And So we were kind of thrown into the mix with all of the kids, and it was a little bit trial by fire. Like
Oh
we
my gosh.
realized, I know, like all the things that we thought we had like talked out in therapy, it was all coming to a head. We had different parenting styles.
Mm.
Um, we we had some issues with the exes, the ex-wife, the ex-husband, all of that, um, that caused a lot of turbulence. And then just our kids having big feelings about like, who is this new person in my life? And like, what are they doing here? And they have these other children and these kids are annoying me and they're, all the things. Um, but we just, a commitment to each other in the beginning, even though it was crazy, even though we had so much stuff to work through, we were like, you know what? Do we really want this? Are you really my person? And we had to have those tough conversations. And we were like, yeah, like you're my person. I want to do this. Let's commit. And so we committed to grow together. And I think that that was the biggest thing that helped us because even in those super, super hard moments of like, I'm so mad at you, like coming back to that commitment of like, okay, let's take a break. We'll come back together. And over time, we've been married for almost 3 years now. We learned each other, we learned ourselves, and we both committed to not only we kept doing therapy together, but we also got our own coaches outside
Mm.
of the couples therapy. So my husband actually started seeing one of our adult chair coaches. And then
Mm.
I had another coach from before that I had been working with. And so we both were doing our own personal work and we were doing our work together with that commitment and then creating just that safe space of like, this is our safe relationship space and putting the relationship first and
Mm-hmm.
saying that, you know what, even when stuff comes up with the kids, even when they're vying for our attention and pulling us in different directions, this is our home base. We come back to each other first. We commit to each other first. We always put each other first. And then we go to how can we best serve our kids? Because I think we both really believe that the relationship is the foundation of the whole family. And if
Mm-hmm.
that marriage or if that, relationship falls apart or gets damaged, it trickles down to the children as well. So,
Wow. You said so. I was taking notes. I was like, dang, I didn't even know all this. I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed. I knew a lot of it. I didn't know all of it though. And I love this. I something that I've always said when I worked with couples with children was you have to be a unified front. And that's what I heard you say a couple different ways that when you have children, I don't care if it's blended or not, you have to come across and not just come across, but be a unified front with your partner and let those kids see you as the unified front. Then they can't wedge in the middle and separate you. And I hear that was really important in the work that you guys did. The second thing that
mhm.
really impressed me was that you guys did couples work and you each had someone that you were working with because of course your own stuff is going to come up, right,
Mhm.
and get in the way.
Yep.
So that's really impressive, really impressive. But I'd like to back up. And again, COVID was at play here. But so if someone's listening to this right now and they're just starting now to date someone, so a question that comes up all the time is when do I introduce my new person to my kids?
Mhm.
What is your feeling on that one? Is there like a policy or rule of thumb or what do you suggest?
So I don't think there's any particular amount of time. Like I wouldn't say like, at least wait 6 months or something like that. Cause I think it's different for every couple. It's very individual. Like if
Mhm.
you meet your person and it's been 3 months and you're like, oh my gosh, like I know this is the person. They're super committed. I'm super committed. You make those,
Mhm. Mhm.
commitments to each other, then okay. Some people it's like, no, I'm not sure. I need to wait a year or I need to wait 2 years. I think for us, we waited maybe like 6 to 9 months, somewhere in there.
Mhm.
Um, but I actually introduced my kids to him before he introduced his to me because he was a little bit more hesitant. Um, he was like, and his kids were older, and so he was like,
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Can we wait? So on the opposite side of that too, I would say just be sensitive to where your partner is at because
Mhm.
you might feel comfortable introducing your kids, but they might not yet. And I wouldn't take it personally. I would just say, hey, you know what?
Mhm.
That's okay. Everyone moves at their different pace. And I think, before you get married, when you're still in that dating phase, like your kids are your number one. And mine were for a while until
Mhm.
we made that conscious choice. Okay, this is our commitment. We're shifting gears now. We are going to get married. This is going to be our number one relationship. And we made a shift in that dynamic. Whereas at first, I was like, I'm a single mom. Like, I'm all about taking care of my kids. I need to make sure they're fed first. And there were times I had to cancel dates on him. There were times he had to cancel dates on me because we had stuff going on with our kids. So I think you just have to be a little bit more sensitive to that going in, knowing like, okay, I'm dating someone with children. They're a good parent. They're a good
Mhm.
mom. They're a good dad. And I'm going to let this person go at their own pace and just know in myself that I'm okay and
Mhm.
that I am worthy, regardless of whether or not they're in the same space as me yet.
Mm. Okay. So what I heard you say is the takeaway. Again, I was taking notes because this is such good
Mhm.
stuff. That it's different for everybody. But what I heard you say is that it's really important to be sure that you are committing to each other and you know that there's something that's long term, that's going to come long term from the relationship. And at that point in time, then you can introduce the kids. But you said, I would guess, I mean, I would guess, wait at least 3 months. Because I remember having many clients that would come in and say, I met the one, and I'm like, "You've dated him 3 times, like, it's been a weekend." "No, no." I'm like, "Let's wait." So, I'm gonna make a guess, something like at least 3 to 6 months. Give yourself time to really get to know that person and be really, really, really sure. Because having people come in and out of a kid's life, it's difficult for them. I mean, they've had a big change from a divorce or a separation or a death or whatever happened in the relationship. Um, they need time. You need time to make sure that this is the person for you, and then slowly introduce the children to them. Would you say yes to that?
Yeah,
Is that true?
definitely. Hmm.
And then I like when you said be understanding of, if they cancel on you, don't take it personally.
Hmm.
Right. And I
Yeah.
would imagine, and again, I'm going back and thinking through all my clients I had over 20 some years. Like sometimes people get their feelings hurt why they cancel on me and they're putting their kids first. And what I heard you say is they should in the beginning until
Yeah.
you make the decision together to become that unified front, to create a union, and then it shifts from kid centered to each other centered. So be
Hmm.
understanding. And if you're triggered, if you're having issues, if someone else is dating, or excuse me, if they're choosing the kids over you when they're dating, that's when you turn toward your coach, toward your therapist, and say, "Is this my stuff?" Because
Yep.
remember, you guys, triggering is our
Hmm.
stuff to take a look at. So, okay, good. Okay, this is really good. Thank you. What do you do when because then you're talking about like having exes involved and there was some issues there. But what do you do when you have different parenting styles? So you're coming together with somebody, you're putting two families together. What do you do
Hmm.
about that? Because you guys had different parenting styles, did you not?
Yeah, we did.
So, so
Um,
what happens there?
yeah. So that was definitely a big conflict for us in the beginning because I would say my parenting style was a little more gentle and he was raised in a military family and so his
Hmm.
style was a little more authoritarian.
Hmm.
Um, and it's been interesting over time because I feel like we've kind of affected each other and like we've come more into the middle. But at the beginning, the way that we were able to kind of separate those out was, and I think this was really helpful too, is that we divided up the responsibilities. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be responsible for disciplining my children. He's going to be responsible for disciplining his children. And then we decided to focus on, okay, what's my role with the stepchildren? So with the stepkids, my role was to build a relationship. So I wasn't the disciplinarian. I wasn't telling them to clean their rooms and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
I was just hanging out with them, like talking to them. Maybe we would go on little outings together to get ice cream or whatever. And so it was just totally focused on building the relationship and then vice versa. So he was building his relationship with my younger kids and I was more of the disciplinarian. So that really helped a lot in the beginning to kind of
Mm,
separate that out. So try that on if that's kind of an issue that's coming up in your relationship. Some people go
mm-hmm.
so far as to like completely separate it and you don't do anything that has to do with your stepkids. I feel like we're kind of in this middle space of like we want to create that connected family dynamic and so
Mm-hmm.
we do a lot of things together. Um but primarily the discipline falls on the biological parent.
Got it. So if you, let's just say that you wanted, uh, or he wants like the room to be clean, like your kids' room, like he wouldn't tell your kids. He would tell you, and then you tell the kids. Is
Yep.
that the way it is
Mm-hmm.
still today, even after being married?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we still do that because we found
Yeah.
that it keeps a lot of the peace. And it also, for me, being in, the mom role, going from having two kids
Mm,
to having four in the house overnight was
yeah.
very overwhelming for me. And at first, I felt like I had to do all of the things myself.
Mm,
Like, for example, school drop offs and pickups. My stepkids go to a school that's 30 minutes away from our house. My kids go to a school that's 5 minutes away from our house.
mm,
So having to drop them off, drive across town, drive myself to work, go get my kids, like stuff like that was just becoming way too much for me.
mm,
So we divided it up. So now he takes care of his kids, I take care of my kids, like sports, all of that stuff is just we separate it out. But
mm.
when we connect, we come together and we do all the family stuff together.
So are you guys really intentional about having family time where everybody's together? Like, do you go to the park together with everybody, or do you go to dinner? Like, are you intentional about that as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're very intentional about family dinner every night. So we all sit around. We have a big island in my kitchen, and we all sit around and eat together. And we have a little kind of a little gratitude practice where everyone goes around and says, "What was the best part of your day?" And so everyone shares their positive thing. We always eat together, and then on the weekends we try to do at least something together as a family, wherever it's going to frozen yogurt or shopping or something active. We might like go on a bike ride or do a movie
Mm,
night in the basement. So, yeah.
that's awesome. I love that. Um, so I hear that the goal again is to be really aligned. Like, and it sounds like you guys are very aligned. And did you find that you had to compromise a lot, or that he had to compromise in order to gain that alignment in the relationship, or to become aligned?
So it's interesting. I feel like, and this I think speaks more to the self work that we did
Mm,
because
mhm,
coming into this relationship, I think we both kind of had our set ideas of this is how it's going to be. And I want things
mhm.
to be this way, and I want things to be this way. And then neither one of us were really getting the things that we wanted. So there was
Uh-huh.
a lot of like resistance and like pushing against each other. And if I can just give a specific example, so my husband is still a teacher and he's an athletic coach.
Mhm.
So he stays after school a lot for practices and games and stuff like that. And at first that was a big issue for me. Like I was like, no, I need you to be home. Like I want you to fit this sport and all the things. And he was like, no, this is my passion. I'm not quitting. And so it was just this back and forth of like, I want you to do this. No, I want to do this. And it wasn't until I did some of my own self work around why is this triggering for me? Like, why is him having his passion and staying late on certain nights like so triggering for me? And once I was able to figure that out and really get to the root of what was making me feel that way, I was like, oh, okay, let me just acknowledge this. And now I can let it go and it can just be okay. And I can support my
Mm,
husband in his passion without it being so triggering for me. And so once I stopped resisting him, then he
mhm.
had nothing to push against anymore. And so then he stopped resisting. And then it was like this space of just, oh, like we just support each other now. And like he even said the other day, he was like, oh, I'm going to leave practice early, or I'm going to give it to someone else. I'm going to come home early. It's like, as soon as I stopped pushing against it, then
Mm-hmm.
he had the freedom to be like, I really want to be with you. Cause that was the thing, is like, I just want that connection time, like that time with you. And as soon as I stopped angrily pushing for it, then he was like, oh, I want it, you know? And so then it was this
Mm-hmm.
coming together instead of this pushing against each other.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's exactly it. I love that. What are some other like what are some of the most common struggles you find either with yourself or with clients? Like what
Mm-hmm.
are some general struggles that people have or the most common ones?
Yeah. So I'd say the two biggest common struggles are issues with kids, um, and issues with exes. Um,
Mm, mm-hmm.
and I think for both of them, it requires a couple of things. One, your self-worth has to be very intact. You have to
Mm-hmm.
know that you are worthy and that your partner loves you and that you're good enough and that you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
do all the things for all the people and be all the things in the world for everyone in order to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was a big struggle for me in the beginning, was setting boundaries with my stepkids, because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I just want them to like me. Like, I want to be the cool stepmom, you
Right.
know? And so like they would do little things and I would be like, ooh, I want to say something, but then I wouldn't. But then it's like, once I just stepped into my power and I was like, okay, I'm the adult. I am worthy. I'm allowed to say, can you put your dish in the sink? It's really not that big of a deal. And I was making it a huge deal because I was
Mm-hmm.
getting really into my feelings about it.
Mm,
So yeah, just know your worth and know, okay, I can set simple boundaries. I can communicate the things that I want and need. And I can also say no when I need to say no. I don't have to say yes all the time. Like, I was feeling a lot of
mm,
pressure. Like, they would
mm-hmm.
ask me, oh, can we do this? Can we do that? And I was feeling a lot of pressure to just say yes to them because I really wanted them to like me. Um, so yeah, get better at sitting in your self-worth, setting your boundaries. And then same with the ex thing. So I think that when it comes to exes, it's really the responsibility of the partner whose ex it is to manage and handle the ex.
Mm-hmm.
That was an area at first where we got wishy-washy of like, oh, let's all talk and let's have these relationships. But it did not work for our family to have all of us be friendly, because that was just not a thing that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
for the people that have that and have those friendships and can do that, and everyone is very healthy and in their adult chair, it can work. But if everyone is not in their adult chair, it does not work. And so
Yep. And how often do you find that both parties are in their adult chair, right? The exes.
it's so hard. I
I
know. And it's just,
know.
there's so many emotions and there's so much history and things that have happened between people, that the
Mm-hmm.
way that we found that was best is just to, you deal with your ex, I deal with my ex, and then we don't communicate other than that. And
Mm,
so just, yeah, setting those boundaries, and that was hard for me as a people pleaser. I was like, I want to be friends. Like, I wish we could just be
mm-hmm.
friends with each other. And I had this whole
Mm-hmm.
idealized, story going on in my mind of like, we're gonna make it work and we'll be friends. And it didn't happen.
No. Oh my gosh. So you talk about centering the relationship, which you've kind of already talked about a little bit, versus centering your own individual wants and needs. Is there anything else you want to share about that? I know that's something you talk about.
Yeah, totally. I think that we're all very good at centering ourselves and our own wants and needs. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we enter into a relationship, we think like, oh, yes, so I'm going to get all these things that I want and you're going to provide them for me. And then we're good. And the other person's like, what? No, I didn't sign up for this. So I do think it is kind of a mind shift, because I do think that in American society and culture in general, it's very individualistic and we expect a lot from our partners. So the way that I talk about relationships is, yes, centering the relationship first and doing things that are going to benefit your relationship instead of just benefiting you. So
Mm,
Like, for example, listening to this podcast the other day, and I don't remember whose it was, but they were interviewing Esther Perel, and she was
Mm-hmm.
talking about, like, the wife wants the husband to do the laundry. And if the husband thinks, well, I don't want to do the laundry, then it's about the laundry. And she was like, but it's not about the laundry. It's about the relationship. Nobody cares
Mm-hmm.
about the laundry. When you say
Mm-hmm.
yes to doing the laundry because your wife wants you to, you're saying yes to the relationship.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
so good. You and I were talking about over last week during the master training, Stan Tatkin, and we talked about the couple bubble.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did that interview with him in August on the podcast here. He was so good, but I love that couple bubble. And I don't care if you're a blended family or not, like that is something that every couple, if you're interested in a healthy relationship and staying together and growing your relationship, a healthy relationship, that's so important. Do you want to talk a little
Mm-hmm.
bit about that couple bubble or share your thoughts on that couple bubble and what it even means?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I love the couple bubble. So, yeah, basically, Stan talks about being very intentional about creating a space in your relationship that's safe and secure, and just bringing each other back to that home base. So, knowing that I can share anything with my partner, he can share anything with me. It's going to stay here, it's going to stay between us. And like, you're the first person that I go to for everything, no matter what it is.
Mhm.
And I think some people are not intentional about setting that up. If we're
Mhm.
wishy-washy about just having expectations but never stating them and not communicating what you want out of the relationship, then it's really difficult to create that. And we can fight and we can cause each other to, get triggered and all the things. And so
Mhm.
having that intentional space of, okay, we are setting this space here. Like, I need you. I need my cup of bubble. I need to air whatever I need to air. And I just
Mhm.
need you to sit and I need you to just listen and be present for me is so powerful. And my husband and I do it at night in bed before we go to sleep. Like, we turn off the TV, we look at each other, we talk, we call it like debriefing our day, like, and we
Mhm.
just talk through like any of those little things that we need to share with each other. And it's very comforting to have that space with your partner and know that you have that.
Yeah, that they've got you and you've got them, like no matter what,
Hmm.
and that you're
Yeah.
number one on their list and you're it's yeah. I mean, I think Stan nailed it with a couple bubble. It's like you've got to be number one on each other's list, and you're the go-to, and you've got each other's backs no matter what. No matter what,
Hmm.
you've got that support, and that feels so good to have that in a relationship.
Yeah. And I
Anyhow,
think it's even elevated with a blended family because there's more parties involved. Like, you
yeah.
have the kids vying for your attention. You might have in-laws vying for your attention. You might have, the exes or whatever. There's just so many people that want to have input on a blended family. And even like
Mhm.
in-laws can have opinions about they like your ex better and they're upset that you picked this new person and they don't like
Mhm.
them and they only respond to their biological grandchildren versus their step grandchildren. And there's just so many dynamics that come into play with a blended family that make it more complicated. So it's even more important, I think, to set up that couple bubble and like make sure that, if that's going on, that you're the one that's managing your parents or however,
Mhm.
whatever they're doing, to set some boundaries with them.
So, speaking of that, what if
Mhm.
what if you're in a relationship, and this is a great point, and I'm thinking about some other issues that might come up, like, what if, let's just say, your new in-laws, they don't like your kids, and you all go there for a holiday, and they're rude to your kids, and then your new husband doesn't speak up. What do you do?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So for me, that would be a conversation with my new husband of like, hey, I noticed that when we went over there that your parents didn't talk to my kids, or it was Christmas and they didn't buy them a present and they bought the other kids a present, or whatever the thing was, and just say, do you think you could talk to your parents about that? And if you have a couple bubble intact, the
Mhm.
partner is going to be like, of course,
Yes.
absolutely, and they'll have that conversation. If you
Mhm.
don't have a couple bubble intact, then that's kind of a different issue and something that, we might need to work on is how do we create that? Because that's honestly the biggest problems that I see are because of other people outside of the relationship causing issues within the relationship because of that exact sort of thing.
That's such a good point. It is. It's always outside the relationship, isn't it? I mean, it's not to say you
Hmm.
can't have issues within the relationship, but when things come up, if you don't have that couple bubble, people might fight over the fact like, oh, your mother was rude to me, let's say, or your mother was mean to my child. Um, and you would fight over that. And the real issue again is that why isn't your partner speaking up and standing up for you? And
Right,
and you can't force them to do it if they don't want to do it. So that's an
right.
issue for, like, again, marriage coaching, marriage counseling, like working on the relationship itself. And it's the mother-in-law is secondary, right?
Hmm.
It's
Exactly.
secondary. It's like there's an issue, and I would say this to people that aren't in blended families or in blended families, like every relationship, I would find when
Hmm.
people would come to me and when I was seeing clients and they'd say, well, I need words and I need you to help me set boundaries around, my husband's mother because she's so mean to me. I'm like, no, no, this is about your husband. He should be the one setting the boundaries, not you. Why are you setting
Hmm.
boundaries with your mother-in-law? Well, he won't.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yep.
Blended or not,
Exactly.
that's the problem. It's the relationship. So there's gotta be the relationship that needs to be looked at.
Right.
Speaking of that,
Exactly. Hmm.
let's talk about tips for connection.
Hmm.
No, wait. Let me back up. I missed one. I want to ask you this first.
Okay.
How the
Okay.
relationship can be a tool for your own healing or a mirror, as we say. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this one's so good. Um, so yeah, I was when you were just talking about the other thing about with the mother-in-law or whatever, I was thinking about, so many times if we don't have that couple bubble set up, we think like, well, I need to defend my mother-in-law. I need to say this, I need to say that. And it becomes an argument. Whereas what that woman really needed was to feel validated in her feeling.
Mm,
Even if you disagree with, oh, you don't think your mom was acting that way, it doesn't matter. It comes back to the whole laundry thing. It's not about the laundry. It's about how does my wife feel right now? What does she need? She needs to be validated. And then, of
mhm,
course, you can go and set the boundary with mom. But I think for in that moment, it's like you can disagree all you want,
mhm.
but just being that presence and saying, you know what, I get it. And I believe you. Like, I think there's so much power in those words of just saying, I believe you. I believe your
Oh,
experience. Because so
yes.
many times we don't do that for our partners and it's so hurtful.
Yeah, versus saying, "I didn't see my mother do that or say that to you. I don't believe it. She didn't mean it." It's like, "No, you gotta believe your partner when they're bringing that to you. Like, believe them. Why would they lie about it?" Like,
Mm-hmm.
I remember working with couples and it was like years and years and years of the mother-in-law or even the mother, whomever, not kind to my client. It's like, hold on. It's your husband's got to speak up, not you. It's the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. But back to your other question because
yeah,
I
I
got
want
off
to talk
track.
about the mirror. Yeah, go ahead. I know we can go
Yeah.
off track
Yeah.
a lot here.
I know. So yeah, I feel like our closest relationships are going to trigger us the most. They just do. Our
Hmm.
relationships
Yep.
with our children, our relationships with our partners. And so that's the really cool thing I think about being in a long-term committed relationship is it gives you so many opportunities to work on yourself because your stuff
Hmm.
is going to come up over and over again. If you're triggered, that's your stuff. It's not your partner's stuff, it's yours. And so how can you take the opportunity to like really look at that and be like, okay, what's coming up for me here and feel that emotion and work through that and maybe there's an underlying limiting belief or negative belief underneath there that you have about yourself that you need to heal before you can start showing up differently in the relationship, which is why I like working with individuals in relationships so much too, is because there's so much to look at and bring as an individual to kind of uncover and dig into those triggers and see what is it that how am I showing up. And that's the biggest thing when I go back to my own relationship is once I changed how I was showing up, oh my gosh, like it was night and day for my partner. Like, it was so funny because just this morning he was saying something about, because I was talking to him about the podcast and I was like, here's some of the things I think I'm going to talk about. And he was like, you know what you need to say? He was like, you need to tell him about how it's so important to just focus on building a relationship with your stepkids first before you try to discipline them. And I was like, oh my gosh, because we used to talk about that at the beginning and he hated that idea. He was like, no, if their room's dirty, I just want to tell them it's dirty. And then now he's telling me, he's like, oh, it's so much. But it's all because of I honestly attribute it to the self work that I did on myself. So instead of being like, well, you need to think this and you need to think that and you're doing it wrong, I just stopped. And I was like, I'm going to do it how I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to show up for him and like shower him with so much love and joy and gratitude every day. And that's what I do, Michelle. Like, it sounds crazy, but like, I was just telling him this yesterday. I was like, when I leave you, I just think about all the positive things. I go through my happy memories with you. I go through all of like the positive qualities that you have. And I was like, I think that's why I text you so much during the day. Cause it's like I start thinking about all the great things about him and then I just want to text him. But it's a conscious gratitude practice that I practice for him and about him. And so then when I come home, I'm so excited to see him because I've been thinking all day about all the wonderful things that he does and all the positive things. And I think so often in relationships, we can get really stuck in the negative and be like, well, you don't do this and you don't do that. And I need you to be better. And here's all the things you're not doing. But when you're looking at all the positive that they're bringing and how much positive change they're making and all the little incremental shifts that are happening along the way, you start to see and tell a very different story.
Well, and you're looking for the good instead of looking for what's wrong. And then I agree. And then your whole reality can change when I love your daily practice. It's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. All the gratitude, specifically with
Mm-hmm.
him. I love that because it's only
Mm-hmm.
going to grow more love, more commitment, more compassion, more forgiveness, like all the beautiful things that you need in a relationship. That's wonderful. I love that. And for
Mm-hmm.
people listening that would want to debate on, well, he triggered me or she triggered me because they're so bad or they're so this. It's like, no, you're getting triggered. Remember, you guys, triggers. Some people I know are like, no, triggers are in the adult chair. We say triggers are a gift. And I've done
Yep.
probably, I don't even know, maybe 10 podcasts on them, on this topic specifically. So you can find those at the adult chair website. Go to the podcast page, put the word triggers in. If you want to learn how to manage your triggers, listen to those shows. In fact, number 98, podcast number 98, I was actually triggered. And then I grabbed my mic and I recorded how I got myself out. And I was mad at my friend, but ultimately it was my stuff that was coming up. Triggers are a gift because they show us our inner beliefs about ourselves. So don't project it out on your partner. Really look at what's coming up for you. So we already talked a little bit about this, but do you have anything else to say about how you get your partner to change versus working on yourself? Like, talk about that. Is there anything else? I know we talked about it already a little bit.
Yeah, so you can't get your partner to change. And if you try, you're just gonna end up in a world of trouble. But it's kind of like I was talking about before. It's like once I stopped resisting my husband, then he was free to stop resisting me. And
Yeah.
somebody has to stop first. Like, you can't always be fighting and pushing against each other because it's not going to get you anywhere. You got to look at yourself. You got to do your own work. And as soon as you start showing up differently, they will start showing up differently too. Like at the beginning of our relationship, I feel like our attachment styles, he's a little bit more avoidant and I'm a little bit more anxious. And so, we were always doing the dance of I want attention and he was like, I need my alone time. Um, but the more I did my own personal work and was able to sit in my own self-worth, and that's what I think is so critical to having
Yeah.
a healthy relationship is having healthy self-worth. And once I
Mm-hmm.
was able to start loving myself and being present with myself and working on my triggers, I started showing up differently, and it gave him space to feel safe with me, because when I was anxious, it just made him feel like, oh, like, let me just back up a little
Mm.
bit. Like, I
Mhm.
don't, this doesn't feel
Mhm.
safe to me. And so once I started becoming more secure, then it invited him to become more secure as well, until we've created this beautiful, safe, secure couple bubble that we have now, where we both are able. It's like, I wish I could show you a movie of how different it is, Michelle, like from the beginning of our relationship, and how we used to fight. We used to not fight well. And now we
Mm.
fight so beautifully. It's weird that I'm describing fighting beautifully, but that is how we fight now. And it's, I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please. I was
Because
like, wait,
you're
you
like,
have
what?
to tell us about what this means and give us an example. This
Okay,
is great.
I'll give you an example. Okay, so my background, I'm biracial. My dad is Native Hawaiian and my mom is white. And so for all of my kids, they all have Hawaiian names. And with my older two children, I chose their Hawaiian names. With my baby, I wanted my dad to pick it because my dad's getting older, and it's like a tradition in Native Hawaiian culture to have some of the elders pick the Hawaiian name. So I had asked my dad to do it. And my husband is not Hawaiian, and so he didn't understand the cultural significance of choosing the name. So it gets closer to our due date, and he was getting impatient. And so he went online and was like, Google translating Hawaiian words, and he had kind of pieced together a little name, and he sent it to me. And I was like, where did that come from? Was that from my dad? And he was like, no, I made it up. And I got so triggered. I got so triggered because I was like, oh, the significance of this. This was such a special thing for my dad to be able to choose. And like, it was, to me, it was about the relationship with my
Mm.
dad. Like, that was why I asked him to do it. And he didn't get that at all. And, in retrospect, I understand why, because he just didn't know. But I got so triggered. And so I was just like, I'm very offended right now. So I need to get off the phone and I need to process my emotions on my own first before I talk to you. So I got off the phone, I did my little process of crying, and then I was like, here's why this is so important to me. And it was so cute because he called me and he was like, would you like to talk this through? And I was like, yes, I would. And he was like, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't understand why it was so important. And I was like, I totally get it. And then I explained why I thought it was important. And he was like, yeah, I just didn't have all that context. And it makes so much sense now. And I understand. And I was like, okay. And then that was it. Like, before, it was like these long, drawn out fights with yelling. And we don't do that anymore. It's like,
Oh.
even our fights feel safe now, which is the craziest thing, because I hadn't experienced that before until now.
Do you think it matters to know that the person that you're fighting with has your back no matter what?
Yes. And I
What's
think that is
different?
made.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this goes back to my self work again, because, like I mentioned, I have more of an anxious attachment. And so if I felt like he wasn't there for me, or he wasn't doing what I needed him to do, I was like, well, I'm out. I'm leaving. I'm done.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
I'm out the door. And I would
Mhm.
do this thing where I would like threaten to leave or like threaten divorce. And now that I know better, it was my way of keeping myself safe. But for him, it was very threatening, and it made him feel very unsafe. And then that's, his walls would
That
go up.
wall. Mhm.
Yep, exactly. And he was like, well, I'm just going to retreat into my little space and not engage with you. And it just made it worse. But yeah, through my own self work, when I realized, oh, yeah, I can see how that would be extraordinarily threatening. That was one of the things we talked about in one of our couple sessions, was like, that feels really scary to him when you do that. And I was like, oh, yeah, that is totally on me. And so I had to like make that commitment to stop doing that, because to him, it felt like
Mhm.
I had one foot in the relationship and one foot out. And he never knew if I was going to, go
Mm.
one way or the other, which was scary. And so once I understood that, I was like, okay, yep, I'm going to stop doing that now. So even just stopping that was
Yeah.
like so helpful, I think, for our relationship, because I haven't done that now in like, I don't know, a couple years. Um, but he just feels so much safer now to be able to be vulnerable with me and like show himself to me.
I think it's important in a relationship. Again, I'm just saying in relationships in general, that we are solid and we're not so thrown. Um, and the only way to do that, I agree with you, is to really feel a sense of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're so solid, we can be mindful of, oh wait, I'm in my anxious attachment, or look, I'm being avoidant, or whatever, and we can show up for them in a completely different way. Um, and then to feel again like I've got your back. I've got your back. No matter what, Amber, no matter what you say to me, no matter what you do, I'm still going to be here for you, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to defend you, and I've got you. When someone says that to you, it changes the whole relationship. It really
Mm-hmm.
does. But the only way to do that though is to feel that sense of self-worth that you keep talking about. And I really do agree with you there. It's important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, one more question for you.
Okay.
What are some tips for connection with your partner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I already talked about my gratitude practice. I think that
Love it.
is a really good one, because it really just gets you focusing on the positive, and it's almost like you're rewriting the story of your
Mm-hmm.
relationship. Instead of focusing on the negative, you're focusing on all the good stuff. And then it just brings you more of the good stuff. Other things I love, and people are like, oh, this might be cheesy, but like looking into each other's eyes and like just connecting and having those moments where you sit and talk together, whether it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know you and Grant have your coffee on the weekends. We do
Mm-hmm.
that too. We have our coffee chats on the weekends, and then we do like our little debrief the day in bed before bed every night. So
Mm-hmm.
having those little rituals, like I love morning rituals and like evening rituals for connection. Um, and touch each other, like hold hands, like hug,
Mm-hmm.
kiss. Like it doesn't even have to be sexual. It's just like sit next to each other on the couch, like put your foot across and touch them in the bed. Like all those little tiny things, moments of connection are so good. I love texting each other throughout the day, like just saying I love you, thinking about you, um, stuff like that. Yeah, those are my
And
favorites.
it's really being intentional, because I've got to say I've been married. I forget. It's 20 it's 25 or 26 years. I don't remember. Um, Graham always has to correct me. He's like, I think it's 26 years. Um, but after the first few years, of course, even the first year, the honeymoon phase is over. And for Graham and I, we had kids. When I was married 1 year, I was 9 months pregnant.
Wow.
So on your 1 year anniversary, wait, when was so our 1 year anniversary was November 16th. I had our first son November 28th. So we didn't, that
Wow.
whole honeymoon phase. I mean, it was such a whirlwind, crazy. We dove right into children that then, became such a focus of our lives. And then now the kids are gone. It is being, because for me, and I'm speaking of people that are obviously at a different phase in their lives, but it does take work. And I do have to say to myself, hey, and it's not that I don't want to, but throw your legs over his, we're on the couch, throw your legs on his. Sometimes it's a natural thing, but other times I'm like, oh yeah, he loves that kind of stuff. And I do too. So let's make sure you're doing that. So different when you've been married a long time, but it does make a
Hmm.
difference. And this
Yeah.
is again when people say, really, it's not just marriages, but relationships take work. You
Hmm.
have to be intentional. Send the text, like you said, to say I love you. Say I love you. Go up and give him a hug out of the blue. Uh, Positive reinforcement. And I love what you had said about how you change the relationship. Um, you said you've got to change to get him to change, or vice versa. Um, the terminology I've always used is like changing the dance. Like if you want the person you're
Hmm.
with to change, I don't care if it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a blended family, whatever it is, you've got to show up in a different way, and then they can show up in a different way. In other words, if you're doing the waltz with them and it's not working out, you got to show up and do the polka or do something else, and then they will match you. But you've got to be
Hmm.
intentional and change if you want to change that relationship. My goodness, so much great information here today. Is there anything else that you want to share that you might have missed?
I was just thinking about something when you were talking, and now I can't remember what it is.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Okay. It came to me when you were talking. Oh, yeah. This is what I was gonna say. So you talked about, the beginning and having kids right away and like, having to be so intentional. I do think that that is one of the really cool silver linings in having a blended family is you get a do-over and you get to look
Mm,
at all of the mistakes you made in the past. And that was a huge one for me, is looking at the mistakes that I made in my first marriage and saying like, what was I bringing to that dynamic that made it go so far south? And how can I not repeat that? And one of those things
mm,
that I brought that was not good was I did not support my partner in his passion. And that was the thing that he told me after we got divorced is he was like, "You never supported me in my music career." And I was like, "You're right. I didn't. I never did. I thought it was
mm,
stupid. I would actively put it down, Michelle, and like
mm-hmm,
I was horrible. It was horrible." Um,
mm,
that's why I feel like I've done so much work in my new relationship because I'm like, how do I be better in supporting him and his passions? Basketball is
mhm.
not my favorite thing. That's okay. Like, just because I don't love basketball doesn't mean that I can't support you and your passion and your career of basketball. Like, I can do that. And it's taken me work,
Mhm.
and I haven't always been perfect at it, but I'm getting better at it and I'm learning how to do that. And I think that that's the really cool blessing of blended
Mm,
families is that you do get a do-over. You get to decide, how am I going to do it this time? How am I going to show up this time? How am I going to be intentional and creating connection in this marriage, in this family that I missed the mark on the last time?
mm. That to me is having a conscious relationship, you know? That's living in your adult chair in relationships. Um, that
Mm-hmm.
and I also like what you just said. You reflected on what didn't I do well in my last relationship and you owned it. You took responsibility and you said, "Let me do it in a new way now." But I can think
Mm-hmm.
of a lot of people that I know that might not look backwards and say, "Oh, that wasn't my fault at all. You know, let me just jump into the new relationship because that one's going to be so much better with fingers crossed." And guess what? Nothing's going to change. You got to look at yourself and say, "How can I do better?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I could go on a tangent. I'm not going to do that right now. So, anyway, this was awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Where might people find you if they would like to get to know you better, look at what you're offering, even your sessions? I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Amber Jones Coaching. And then I also have a website by the same name. It's amberjonescoaching.com. And then I'm also on your website, Michelle.
You
Yes,
are right
I
at
am.
theadultchair.com / is it coaches or coach. So yeah,
Mhm.
come find Amber. So you do individual sessions. Are you doing anything with groups right now?
Yeah, so I do individual, I do couples, and then I'm working on a program for groups right now. It's not out yet. It's coming soon. It should be up in the next couple of months though. So yeah, go
Perfect.
to my website and yeah, follow me for more info.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Amber. It was so great having you on. And thank you for being such a great representative and role model for how we can do blended families well. And I know we're going to get a lot of questions on this show. So, like I said in the beginning, we might need to have you on again based on all the conversations going on in the adult chair closed group, because I have a feeling it's going to spark some really good conversation. And again, you guys, always you can hit me up, and if you have questions for Amber, we will get them to her, or you can go to her directly on her Instagram. So thanks,
Mhm.
Amber. Have a great rest of your
Yeah,
day.
thanks. You too. Bye.